Thank you all for joining. Today I have one of our engineers for our CN pilot line, Puneet, who will be discussing some new developments on the product. So without further ado, Puneet, go ahead.
Thanks, Ray. Hi, welcome everyone. So we'll go over some of the new features on the CN Pilot series of Wi-Fi access points. Just to recap, the CN Pilot Wi-Fi portfolio comprises of 3 enterprise access points. The CN Pilot E400, which is our indoor 11AC access point. The ePMP 1000 hotspot, which is the same hardware that the ePMP 1000 uses, but with a software that has been repurposed for Wi-Fi. And then the upcoming CN Pilot E500, which is our outdoor dual radio 11AC access point. We also have a portfolio of access points for home access, the R200 and the R201, and all of these access points can be managed with the CN Maestro wireless controller. CN Maestro is currently available in cloud form, but we are also coming up with an on-premises version, which is going to be starting beta shortly. In fact, by end of this week, we will start the beta release of the on-premise CN Maestro. The typical deployment use cases for our Wi-Fi access points are homes for the R200, R201, retail, so small coffee shops, malls, with the E400 for indoor access and the ePMP 1000 hotspot, as well as the upcoming E500 for outdoor. Public Wi-Fi, schools. We have recently had the software version 2.0 released for the enterprise access points. The same software version applies to the ePMP 1000 hotspot as well as the CN Pilot E400. This was released earlier in April. It is now up on the support site, so you can download and try out this software version. This is also part of CN Maestro. So if you have a cloud.cambium networks account and you're managing your APs through CN Maestro, you can upgrade your access points from within CN Maestro to version 2.0. The new software features that were added in 2.0 include support for wireless mesh. So officially we support single hop mesh. We have experimental support for multiple mesh hops. We now support enterprise fast roaming features such as Aero 211R and OKC. We also support band steering on access points that are dual radio, so on the E400. This will also be supported on E500 as soon as the E500 product launches. We have expanded our support for SNMP on these devices. So until version 161, which was our last release, SNMP support was limited to primarily discovery of the device and basic parameters over MIB2. We have now added a number of Cambium MIBs which allow you to manage and collect statistics of these access points. There have also been some enhancements to the GUI. We had a lot of feedback where some of our GUI screens needed refreshing for the statistics to be updated. So we'll go over all of these features in detail over the next few slides. 2.0 also has various bug fixes that have been rolled up since 161. So if you're running a current Wi-Fi network with E400 or ePMP 1000 hotspot, we would recommend upgrading to 2.0. So going over the features, wireless mesh support has been one of the key features in the release 2.0. As I mentioned, we support single hop mesh. So you can extend your wireless coverage to another access point. And even if the AP is installed in a location where a cable run is not easily possible, now you can still have Wi-Fi coverage by having the AP form a mesh link back to another access point. The radio that you use for mesh link can also service clients at the same time, so you don't have to dedicate the radio to mesh. We would recommend running mesh over 5 GHz. Since the channels are cleaner and also wider, you can go up to 80 MHz on the 11AC APs. Mesh requires manual provisioning. So in this release, you can't take an AP out of the box, plug it in and have it connect back. You would need to set up mesh and then plug in the AP and it would connect back to the rest of the network. We do support the mixing of access point types. So you can have an ePMP 1000 hotspot, for instance, forming mesh to a E400. Where the E400 could be installed indoors, inside a coffee shop, for instance, and the ePMP 1000 installed out in the street, and you can form a mesh link between these two. We're planning to expand this support to R200 and R201 as well in the future, so that you can form a mesh link between the home AP as well as an ePMP 1000, say, which is installed outdoors. Support for third-party APs is currently not part of this release. We are using standard WDS for mesh, but we also include VLAN tags over the mesh link. And we are experimentally checking out whether the other access points that we see also support mesh in an interoperable manner. So based on that, we might be able to allow support for this for third-party APs going forward. This had been one of the feature requests that had come back during our beta program. So mesh is very simple to configure. We wanted to keep the bring up and the setup of mesh as simple as possible. So it's all included inside the wireless LAN config. You would go to the first wireless LAN on your access point, and the default mode would be mesh is off, meaning that wireless LAN is set up for servicing clients. You can change this to either be a client or a base. If you change this to a client, then the radio would come up and scan for a base radio to connect to. And the way the connection forms is based on the SSID. So you would configure the same SSID on the mesh base and the same SSID on the mesh client. The access point, which is set up for mesh base, would come up, bring up the WLAN and the radio, start beaconing, and any other client radio in its vicinity will then scan and detect and form the link automatically. Once the link forms, all the traffic is forwarded over this mesh link. You don't have to do anything else other than setting up mesh mode and the SSID. We support WPA2 PSK security, so you can also enable that and configure a passphrase. The same passphrase should be configured on both the mesh base and the mesh client. Starting release 2.0, we also support enterprise fast roaming. So a couple of modes for this are 802.11r, which is a standardized mechanism called fast BSS transition. This is supported by all the newer mobile devices such as iPhones and Androids, the newer Samsung Galaxies. The main advantage of 11R is it reduces the number of protocol handshake messages that happen as the mobile device moves from one AP to another. So as part of the association process, the mobile device would scan for an access point, then carry out an association, and then it would do, based on the security type, anywhere from 4 to 14 messages back and forth between the AP and the client for setting up the security association. While all of this is happening, no data traffic is being forwarded over the link. So there is a noticeable latency. What 11R does is modify some of these messages and reduces the total count. So from 14 or even 16 messages, you now come down to 2 to 4 messages that are exchanged over the air. So that makes the roam very quick. This is most noticeable if you're running VoIP devices. So if you're running wireless voice over IP, 11R would be very helpful in the user experience as the client roams from one AP to another. Opportunistic key caching is another method of fast roaming. This is an extension to the standards. It is supported on most of the popular mobile devices except iPhones. iPhone is a notable exception that does not support this. It works in the same way as 11R in that it reduces the number of messages that are exchanged between the client and the AP as the client roams from one AP to another. In addition to mobile devices, this is also supported on laptops. So if you're running WPA2 Enterprise, we would recommend that you enable opportunistic key caching and 802.11r based on your client type. So there have been interoperability issues with 802.11r and very old phones and laptops. So one point of caution with 11R is if you do see clients that don't connect once you enable 11R, you should look for older, if you have any older clients, look for either driver updates or disable 11R while you still have the older clients on your network. OKC on the other hand does not modify the 802.11 messages themselves, so that is safe to enable. So if you're running WPA2 Enterprises, go ahead and enable OKC. Starting release 2.0, we also support band steering. So band steering is a feature where the access point will try to nudge the client from the 2.4 gig radio to the 5 gig radio. The 5 gig radio is preferred because the spectrum tends to be cleaner than 2.4. There are less other devices as well as co-channel interference. It also supports wider channels going all the way to 80 megahertz. while 2.4 is usable only up to 20 megahertz. And you also get better data rates. So for instance, the 11AC QAM 256 rates are only available in the 5 gig spectrum. So we have seen cases where a client is dual band capable, so it can do both 2.4 and 5 gig, but it ends up associating to the access point on 2.4 because that might be the first SSID that it sees when it comes up and scans. So when you enable band steering on a wireless LAN, the access point will delay the first association, and it will then remember that this access point, that the client is capable of 2.4 gig or is capable of 5 gig. And usually if you delay the association on 2.4, the client would scan again, find the 5 gig radio and connect to the 5 gig radio. Now this delay would happen only the first time that you bring the mobile device on the network. Once the access point learns the capability, the AP would remember it, and the AP would also synchronize it among the other access points. Band steering is a useful feature, especially if you have a large number of dual band capable clients and you see many of them associating only to the 2.4 gig radio. Enabling band steering should move a large number of those to the 5 gig radio. In terms of configuration, band steering is just a checkbox in the wireless LAN configuration. This is a screenshot of the WLAN config page on the AP GUI. So band steering is a checkbox. Fast roaming are also just checkboxes, OKC and 802.11r, as well as pre-authentication, which is a somewhat older method of fast roaming supported with WPA2 Enterprise. Although pre-authentication has the downside of increasing the traffic on your Radius server. So we would in general recommend enabling OKC, enabling band steering if you have a lot of dual band clients and you see them connecting more to 2.4 than to 5 gig. Enhanced SNMP support. So starting release 2.0, we also have a Cambium MIB. The MIB is released as part of the software package on the support side, so you can download the MIB and include it in your SNMP manager. The 3 new tables that we include are for AP information, radio information, and client information. And we include various parameters related to the RF information, the traffic patterns, the TXRX, bytes and packets, and the capacity, the number of clients that are currently associated to the radio. We also include basic information that you can use to manage and inventory or access points, such as the software version, the MAC address of the AP. All of these parameters are described in the MIB. There have also been some enhancements to the onboard GUI. We had a request to have an option to do auto refresh. So now the GUI on the top right corner on the dashboard includes a pull down where either every 5 seconds, 30 seconds, you can refresh or you can keep it off. So if you're on a very high latency link from your browser to the access point, recommend using a longer interval or leaving it at the default of 30 or even turning it off. If you're on a relatively fast connection between your browser and the GUI and the device, then you can go down to 5 seconds, and every 5 seconds the device will automatically your browser will automatically update the statistics. So all the tables, all the graphs on the dashboard will be updated in near runtime. We've also enabled experimental support for configuring from mobile devices. So if you have mobile phones or tablets, you can now use the onboard GUI. More extensive support for this is coming in our 3.0 release later in Q2. A sneak peek at some of the other features that will be supported on the enterprise access point over the next couple of months. We're adding support for Hotspot 2.0. So Hotspot 2.0, also known as Passpoint, is useful on carrier networks. It gives a phone-like roaming experience over Wi-Fi. So if you go to a coffee shop and your coffee shop already has a roaming agreement with your mobile phone provider, AT&T or Verizon, Sprint has been a large proponent of Hotspot 2.0. Your phone would automatically connect. You wouldn't have to scan for the SSID, figure out which is the right SSID, and then connect to that to get Wi-Fi access. So we're going to be adding support for Hotspot 2.0 over the next couple of months. We're also adding support on the device side for the on-premise, the NOC version of CN Maestro. CN Maestro again is currently in cloud, but we are starting beta of the NOC version now, basically later this week. And we are planning to enhance our mesh capabilities, where instead of requiring the mesh APs to be configured offline and then provisioned and installed, you could take an access point out of the box, have it plugged into your network, and it would form a mesh link back to the rest of your network, and you can connect and configure the access point. So that was an update on the enterprise series. We are also updating the residential and small business, the R200 and R201 access points with the software version 4.3, which is going to be releasing in June. 4.3 includes support for IPv6. It also adds support for encryption of passwords in the configuration file. So the passwords that show up, for example, for WPA, PSK, they show up in clear text today in the configuration file. So if you export the config, you can view the passwords. The enterprise access points already had a feature where this password was encrypted. We've had a feature request to add this onto the R series. So that feature is coming out in 4.3. We've also had region-specific regulatory fixes, primarily for Australia and New Zealand, which were part of a maintenance release 4.2.2. Those are also being rolled into the 4.3. And we have various bug fixes in traffic forwarding as well as voice on the SIP side in version 4.3. From a hardware perspective, cnPilot E500 would be releasing in Q2. We are starting beta testing of this. This is our 11AC outdoor access point. It's built on the same platform as the E400, so it's a 2x2 11AC radio. But the housing is IP67 industrial grade, so it's got a much more ruggedized housing, and it can handle a wider range of temperatures. It's meant for outdoor installs. It also supports PoE out, so unlike the E400, which has one Ethernet port, the E500 will have two, and on the second Ethernet port we can also power another device. We support both modes of PoE, the Cambium PoE as well as standard 3AF. So you can power either a EPSM, for instance, or you can even power a device which uses standard 3AF, such as some sort of camera or any other outdoor device which handles PoE. Again, E500 beta tests are starting now. This will be orderable in May and generally available in June. That's pretty much the cnPilot update.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you, Puneet. If anyone has any questions, please post them within the questions box right now. I know you had one question when the E500 was available, but I think, Puneet, you just answered that with the last slide there.
Yeah, so the E500 is will be orderable in May. We're starting betas now, and will be GA in June.
Fantastic. Well, Puneet, I think that's all we have, so thank you for that. I would recommend and highly suggest everyone to post on our Facebook page, Twitter, LinkedIn, look at our YouTube channel, and even post on our community forum, which we've been having a lot of traction. Majority of our engineers and team members constantly are on the forum, looking at your comments, at your stories, any ideas you have, and a lot of times those are specifically implemented within software updates and are looked at when new products are being developed and so forth. So without further ado, I just want to thank everyone for joining. Puneet, thank you as well, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, everyone.